Hello everybody, and welcome back to 89 Games, and continuing our series on the Gloomhaven guide series. Today we're going to be talking about the Circles class. So if you want to avoid spoilers, here's your chance to click away, but for everyone else, we're going to go ahead and get started in 3, 2, 1, here we go. Alright, so today we have the Summoner. Now, the Summoner is a very unique class, as the name would suggest. Most of our cards are based on summons and using summons to do our damage and to get through a scenario rather than our character themselves for the most part. And as summons in Gloomhaven aren't always the best, it's kind of a hard class to play. It sounds really cool because you get to control like this army of summons, but at the same time, the way summons work in Gloomhaven, it doesn't always end up being as cool or as fun as I think it really should have been. But let's go ahead and jump into the cards and we'll talk about the class, and we're going to try and make a build here that will work even with the summons being the way that they are in Gloomhaven. So let's go ahead and talk about the first card here with Forged Ferocity. So Forged Ferocity, summon Iron Beast. He has 5 health, 2 move, 1 attack. He retaliates for 1 and has shield 1. And of course, all of these summons are burns, which is the biggest negative about the way summons work in Gloomhaven. So once he's dead, he's gone, but we do have a card that we'll talk about here in a little bit down here where we can get 4 of our burn cards back, and that's heavily going to play into our strategy and being able to keep summons on the board. So this summons here with Retaliate 1 and Shield 1 and 5 health, it's not bad. He's got some survivability. He's always going to be doing damage either on offense or defense with that Retaliate. So he's a decent summons early on, and we are going to be using him early on. The bottom of this one, it gives you a Shield 1 for yourself and all summoned allies, which could come in handy, but it's kind of hard to use that because our initiatives with the Summoner are usually later. There's a lot of later initiatives, which generally when you're playing with the summons is a good thing. You want your summons to go later so that they're not the target of most attacks. However, it means that a shield card like this is pretty useless because we can't use it early enough for it to really mean anything. And then moving on to Wild Animation, the second one. I really like this summons though because it is a ranged summons. We're going to keep this one for a long time. It has 2 health, 1 move, 2 attack, range 4, and it poisons. So 1 move is really crappy because it's going to have a hard time keeping up, but with range 4 it should be okay for a while. Plus every attack will poison from this guy, and being that he's at range, we won't have to worry about him actually getting up in the fray and getting hit because he only does have those 2 HP, so he'll die really quickly if he does take a hit. And then the bottom of this one is a nice move 5, which activates Wind. And talking about movement, that's something else we need to think about as the summoners, that we do not have a lot of movement, especially once we put these summons out here and we lose those movement on the bottoms like this one. So movement is going to be an issue for us, although your summons should be doing most of the work, so you don't really need a lot of movement, but just keep that in mind that every turn you might want to be moving up 1 or 2 with a basic move just to kind of keep up. And then moving on to the next card here is Living Night. So this one allows us to summon 2 things at once. Summon 2 Shadow Wolves. They each have 3 health, 3 move, 2 attack, and 2 pierce. Now, this one, it does summon 2, so that's good, but they also only have the 3 health, so they're going to die really quickly. So I don't know how I feel about this one. I don't think I really like it. I feel like they don't last long enough. When I was playing in the board game version, someone in my group did play the Summoner, and I got to see a lot of how she works, and this particular card just didn't seem to be all that useful most of the time because the Shadow Wolves would just die too easily. However, the bottom of this one that allows all attacks targeting you and summon allies to gain disadvantage for the round, that's really good, but again, you have to be able to get it off early, which is a problem. But I do like this card for one very specific reason, and that is that it activates Dark. And we're going to pick up a couple cards later on that use Dark. So I'm going to keep this one around after level 2. We are going to remove it, but then we're going to put it back in once we pick up our first Darkness card. Simply because this one activates Darkness, and it's the only way as a summoner we can activate Darkness outside of items. If we have the right teammates, we may not need this one, but otherwise we'll need it for that Darkness. And then moving on to Unending Dominance. So this one is your Lava Golem. He's got 7 health, 2 movement, he attacks for 3, and activates fire every time he attacks. He also wounds with his attacks, and he retaliates at 2 with range 2. But this guy is a burn that you can't recover, even with a recovery card, and he's the top of your recover for burned cards. This is kind of your, maybe a boss fight summons, a fight that you shouldn't last more than 6 or 7 rounds, hopefully, and you're going to kill the boss. So this might be one you'd want to use in that situation. But otherwise, we're going to hang on to it for the bottom because it allows us to recover those 4 burned cards. So when we start getting low on cards, we can just discard our summons, recall them from the map, use this card to get them all back, and then we can put our summons back out there again for another round. So then moving on to Unwavering Hand next. This one is a heal 3, range 3 on the top with gain 1 XP, and the bottom forces one enemy within range 4 to perform move 1 with you controlling the actions. So this one for the top is a good one to hang on to for a while just because it's got that heal 3 with range 3. So really mostly to heal your summons. Any summons that has enough health where they have more than 3 health, and this makes sense, you can heal them to keep them in the fight longer. But of course you could also use it on yourself or your other allies if you so choose. And then moving on to Mighty Bond is our next one. This one allows you to have one adjacent ally perform move 0, attack 0, with you controlling the action. So this is a good way to control your summons and where they go and what they do. However, you have to be adjacent to them in the first place. So doing that can be a challenge because of our movement issue with the summoner. Of course, we can get different boots and things to help with this, but this card early on might be okay, but as we get later on, I feel like it's going to get harder to use because of our movement. The bottom, though, is a nice move forward with jump that helps with that movement problem. And then the next one is Bonded Might, which does the exact same thing on the top, except the bottom is just a loot 1. Early on, combining the bottom of this one with the top of this one might be a good idea to get next to your allies to make them do what you want them to do. However, in general, I don't think these are that great because you only get to do it once, and they have to be adjacent. That's the biggest thing that sucks about this card, is you have to be adjacent to them, and it makes it really hard to use them effectively. So then moving on to Biting Wind. Biting Wind is an attack 2, range 3. If you have wind, we can consume it to make it +1 attack and push 2, gain 1 XP. And then the bottom is another heal 3 with range 3, which again is good for healing our summons. And then the top of this one, though, it's a good attack for us finally. It's not super strong, but at least just gives us something that we can do outside of summoning. And then the next one is Black Fire. Black Fire is an attack 1 with range 5. It targets 2, you consume fire, you can also wound and gain 1 XP. So if you have fire out there, and mind you, the only way to get fire out there with a summoner is to have played the summoning, the lava golem, and he's activating fire for you. Then you're going to be really limited though, so you're kind of like, this is like a one summons game. You could play a setup where you only summon this guy and all your cards are built around supporting him. That actually could possibly be a viable playstyle with her, although you would have to make sure he doesn't die, because if he dies, then your entire plan is gone. So back to Black Fire. It'd be hard to have that fire out there unless someone else in our party is activating it. And then the bottom, though, is a move 3, and you muddle all adjacent enemies. So for the move 3, this isn't bad, because we are, again, limited on mobility. So that's the level 1 cards. Let's talk about the 3 X cards here. Leathery Wings, you summon a giant bat. It's got 4 health, 2 move, 2 attack, and activates wind, and it's flying. Not super terrible, but again, it's only got 4 health. It's probably just going to die really quickly and not be of much use. The bottom is Strengthen, affect all adjacent allies, which, if you can get adjacent to your allies, could be useful. And then the next one is Volatile Flame, which is the only X card that I really like. The top is a Summon Living Bomb. So he's only got 1 health. He moves 3, he attacks for 2. But on death, he attacks for 3 and activates fire, targets all enemies within range 2. So early on, this is a good summons just to go and hit a group with and do a bunch of damage all at once. If you can summon him kind of back behind your tank or something so that he doesn't get targeted on his first turn when he shows up, and then send him in there on the next turn, he can blow up, maybe hit 3-4 enemies for an attack 3, and that could be really, really powerful. So I like him for that reason. He's essentially, you use him as what he is, a living bomb. And then the bottom is a nice attack 2 with range 3, activates fire. So I guess there is another way to activate fire there. If we use the bottom of this, then we would have fire to be able to do the top of Black Fire later on. So then moving on to Ethereal Vines. Ethereal Vines is an attack 1, range 3, immobilize in that triangle pattern, and then the bottom is a move 2, you heal 1, affect all adjacent summoned allies. And again though, they have to be adjacent, and that's really where the problem comes in with a lot of the summoner's abilities, is it wants you to be adjacent to your summons, which just isn't practical most of the time. Alright, so With all of that said, though, let's go ahead and move into the leveled cards and see what we can find to improve our hand. So Earthen Steed, or Grasping the Void, at level 2. Earthen Steed is an active card on the top, and it allows on any of your move actions, or the move actions of any ally you have summoned, you may consume grass to add +2 move and gain 1 XP. So this can make you have a little bit better mobility if grass is out there, or your allies, but again, grass has to be out there. It's very situational whether you're going to be able to have that out there consistently. And then the bottom, though, is a nice move 5 with jump. And then Grasping the Void is the other one. This is the first one that uses that darkness that I talked about. So it's an attack 2, range 3, and curse. If you have darkness, though, it becomes a stun as well, and you gain 1 XP. And then the bottom is an attack 2, range 3, and then a heal 2 on ourself. So we're going to take Grasping the Void here for that stun, because stun is really powerful, especially when you can do it from range. And actually, before we finish talking about that, I forgot to mention that at level 1, I would take out Living Knight, the Shadow Wolves, to put Volatile Flame in to use that Living Bomb. So at level 1, that's the only change I would make. And then now here at level 2, to put Grasping the Void in, here's where it gets a little convoluted, because we're going to take out Bonded Might to get Grasping the Void in. And then in order to have a way to create darkness to use this stun, we're going to have to put Living Knight back in. So we'll take Blackfire out and put Living Knight in. And that's what we'll look like at level 2. Alright, now we're going to move on to level 3. Tear the Fabric, or Oozing Manifestation. So Tear the Fabric kills all normal enemies whose current hit point value is less than or equal to 5. Now, they have to be adjacent to you, which makes this kind of hard to use, plus they have to have less than 5 health. It's very situational, and it is a burn, which playing as a summoner, you really can't afford to use burns because all of your summons are already burns. Almost every card you're playing 3 or 4 cards that are burns pretty quickly, so we really don't like that one. And then the bottom is a heal for self. If you have grass, it becomes +2 more heal. Really good if you're healing yourself, and the only reason I can see for a lot of these heal selves for the summoner is if you're putting yourself in the line of fire so that you're getting attacked to take hits away from your summons. But again, your summons are going to be targeted first if the distance is equal, which means it's actually really hard to draw damage away from your summons. So I think that was kind of the idea behind giving the summoner these heals for their self, but because the way targeting works, the summons go before you, they're always going to get targeted before you unless you are actually closer to the enemy, which with any of your melee units is not going to be the case. So I really do not like that. However, Oozing Manifestation, the top is a summoned Slime Spirit. He has 4 health, moves 3, attacks are 1, but he muddles on all his attacks, and he also has 2 shield, which makes him really tanky. Yes, he only has 4 health, but a lot of damage is not going to be getting to him because of that shield. He may only take 1 damage every turn, or only 2. Like, he's going to last more than a turn or 2 with that shield too. So I like him as a replacement actually for our Forged Ferocity. And then the bottom is an attack 3, range 3, immobilize. And again, here's the other use of darkness. We can add curse to that. So we're going to take the Oozing Manifestation, and we're going to have him replace our Forged Ferocity, just because he's a little bit tankier than Forged Ferocity is. And he also has more movement. So we're going to take him, and then we're going to move on to level 4, where we're going to find Living Mountain or Divided Mind. Now, Living Mountain, Summon Rock Colossus. He has 7 health, 1 move, and 3 attack with Activates Grass. No other special abilities. So, because of the 1 move, though, I really don't like this one. The health isn't bad for tanking some hits, but the move 1 means he's not going to keep up for very long and then just become irrelevant in the background. And then the bottom is only a move 2 with loot 1. The other card, Divided Mind, it allows 2 summoned allies within range 2 to perform move +0 with you controlling the actions, and you gain 1 XP. And then the bottom is 2 summoned allies within range 2 perform attack +0 with you controlling the action. So since this one has that range 2 to it, it's going to be a little easier for us to use with our mobility problems. And then this could potentially get, 2 summoned allies to attack, which would be really powerful because it gives them both an extra attack during the same turn. So I like Divided Mind. We're going to take that one. And then we're going to trade out Mighty Bond because it's essentially the same thing, except, it allows you to move and attack at the same time, but only 1, and they have to be adjacent to you. So we're going to essentially upgrade that with Divided Mind. And then we'll move on to level 5, where we're going to find Strength in Numbers or Conjured Aid. So Strength in Numbers, one adjacent summoned ally performs move +1, attack +1 with you controlling the action. But again, they have to be adjacent to you. And then the bottom is attack X, range X, where X is the number of all summoned allies. So, that could be powerful, but most of the time you're probably not going to have more than maybe 4 summoned allies max. So still only attack 4, range 4. However, the other one, Conjured Aid, this one summons Healing Sprite on the top. It only has 2 health, but it has 2 move. It attacks for 1, it has range 3, and it performs Heal 2 at range 2 at the end of its turn. So this is actually a really good one because first off, it's a ranged summons, which means it's less likely to be targeted. It has decent movement to keep up with its range, and then it also heals either you or the other summons or your allies for 2 at the end of its turn. And then the bottom is a nice move 5 to help with our mobility. So I like Conjured Aid here. We're going to take that one. And at this point, we'll probably take Volatile Flame out because we'll be using this Healing Sprite instead. And if you look, we'll probably have Wild Animation out there early on because of its range and poison. And then we'll end up having Oozing Manifestation out there as well, and then Conjured Aid. I'm generally going to play this where we have 3 summons out there at a time. And before we had Oozing Manifestation, it was Forged Ferocity that would have been out there. So essentially, 3 summons at a time to give you that little bit of an army out there, but still kind of keep enough cards in our hand that we don't get exhausted too quickly. So we'll go ahead and move on to level 6 now, where we're going to find Endless Spikes and Inexorable Momentum. So Endless Spikes is another summons. It has 4 health, it moves 2, it has no attacks, but it retaliates for 2 and has shield 1. So that's not necessarily bad. It would do some damage, a little bit of damage, but it would still die pretty quickly with only shield 1, especially talking we're at level 6, so the enemies are going to be stronger at this point. The bottom is a retaliate 2, and it affects all your summoned allies, which that could be pretty decent if everything's about to get attacked. However, the other one, Inexorable Momentum, is an attack 3, range 3 with pierce 3, and if we have wind, we can add +2 attack to it. Now that's for us, so this is another nice attack for our character to actually have and be able to use. And then the bottom is a move 3, and then one adjacent summoned ally can move 3. So this is really good for moving us up, and then maybe moving one of our summons up that has kind of fallen behind. So I really like this one here better than Endless Spikes. So we're going to take that one. And then Inexorable Momentum will replace Biting Wind. So we'll take Biting Wind out, put that one in, and then we'll move on to level 7, where we find Negative Energy and Staff of Visions. So Negative Energy, this is actually a decent summons up here with an attack, or rather health 5, move 3, attack 2, range 2, but it curses with all of its attacks, which is really powerful, putting a bunch of miss cards into the enemy's deck. So I like that one as a summons. And then the bottom is a curse, target all enemies adjacent to any one summoned ally, and then activates darkness. So it's another way for us to activate dark as well if we don't use the summon side of the card. And then the other one, though, is Staff of Visions, which is an attack 5 muddle. If you have fire, it's +1 attack and wound, and you gain 1 XP. But this is a melee attack, so not ideal for the summoner, who should generally probably not be on the front line. And then the bottom is a move 3, and you strengthen all adjacent allies. So the move 3 with the strengthen isn't bad, because again, you could possibly get up there to where your allies are and actually use the strengthen on them. However, I like Negative Energy here because of the summons. We're going to use that summons actually to replace Wild Animation now, because I think even though the poison will add more damage to the enemies that it's attacking, ultimately this curse is going to prevent more damage to our team probably over the long run if we get to get this off more than 2 or 3 times. So we're going to do that, put Negative Energy in there, and now Summon Void Eater is going to be our new summons for the back line at range there. And then we'll move on to level 8, where we're going to find Intervening Apparitions and Otherworldly Rage. So Intervening Apparitions, both of these cards, by the way, are really good. I like both of them for different reasons. Intervening Apparitions, the next 3 times summoned allies would suffer damage, they suffer no damage instead. So this is really great for keeping your summons alive a little bit longer. Yes, it is another burn card for you, but it's going to keep those summons out there. And honestly, as I talked about earlier, if you decide to do a strategy where you focus on just using the Lava Golem guy, combining this card with that would be excellent because he'd have 3 attacks that he can negate before he would ever even take damage. And then the bottom of this one, remove all curse cards from your attack modifier deck, then shuffle the attack modifier discard pile back into the deck, and it activates light. So if for some reason you got a bunch of curses on you, because you do have a lot of summons out there, and those curses would go into your hand, into your modifier deck if your summons get cursed. So this would remove all those curse cards. So, you know, it's useful for that reason. And then the other one, Otherworldly Rage. This one is good too, because this one allows one summoned ally within range 3 performs attack +2, wound, and poison with you controlling the action. So you get to do an attack maybe 4 or 5, depending on what ally you're using. They get wound and poison added to the attack, and you can do this from range 3. You can be range 3 from them to give them this attack. So it's really powerful, it's really good, and it's reusable. So I do like that as an attack option to give us more flexibility and be able to use our summons a little more. And then the bottom also, swap positions with any one summoned ally and then move 3, is a great way for us to catch up if we're falling behind. However, out of the two, I think I'm going to have to go with the intervening apparitions just to keep my summons alive a little longer, which keeps me overall more effective. So we'll take that one and we'll replace Unwavering Hand to put that in. So we finally lost all of our heals doing this, but with our summons only not taking damage for 3 times, the healing is going to be a little less important. And then finally we'll move on to level 9, where we will find Interplanar Mastery and Horned Majesty. So Interplanar Mastery, recover up to 2 of your burned cards, and then the bottom is a move 6 with jump. So this is another great way to extend our stamina and our playtime with the summoner, because we can get 2 cards back right away with this one, in addition to getting cards back with Unending Dominance. Of course, these cards can't get each other back, but that's fine. And then the other one is Horned Majesty, which is another summons. It summons a black unicorn with 6 health. It moves 4, it attacks for 4, it pierces 3, and then it gives us 3 experience points. And then the bottom, all summoned allies within range 3 perform attack +0 with you controlling the actions. So as a summons, in a level 9 summons, this is really disappointing. 6 health, 4 move, and 4 attack. Great, but I mean, we're at level 9. Enemies are probably going to kill this thing in 1 hit. So what's the point, really? And then the bottom isn't bad, giving a bunch of summoned allies the extra attacks. However, I like Interplanar Mastery because our summons are going to be dying pretty quickly. So being able to get 2 of them back really quick with this card, the top of this card, is an ideal situation, I think. So we're going to take that one, and then we're going to take out Grasping the Void at this point to put Interplanar Mastery in. Now, if we were still using that stun a lot, we could also, you know, take something else out. But just for the sake of argument and brevity here, I'm going to take out Grasping the Void. And there we go with level 9. So the key to playing the summoner is going to be to get your 2 or 3 summons that you want to use out there really early. And then once they die, use Unending Dominance to get them back from the burn card pile, and then play them again. And then once you have Interplanar Mastery and you can recover 2 more cards, then I would recommend, like, the first 2 summoned allies that die, just go ahead and use this to get them back real quick and put them back out there. And then also, if you get to the end of your cards and you need to take a long rest and you still have allies that are out there, but maybe they're falling behind, because like the wild animation, he only has 1 movement. Even though he has range 4, he only has 1 movement. Maybe he's too far behind to be useful. Just go ahead and discard him, you know, put him in the lost pile, and then when you take your rest, you can get him back. Or rather, before you take your rest, the turn before, use Unending Dominance to get them back. So go ahead and deactivate your summons, use this card to get them back, and then do your rest. Or vice versa, do your rest, then get them back. Either way, get those back when you can, and then it extends your play a little bit longer. But as a summoner, you will find you'll probably be getting exhausted really quickly because of the way most of her cards to use are burns. She's not going to last very long, so you want to try and do as much as you can as early as you can in the combat, and then hopefully it's not a scenario where you have to survive the whole time. If it is, then you're going to have to limit your summons and not summon as much. So with all that said, let's go ahead and talk about some items real quick for the summoner that would make sense. So for our head items, Empowering Talisman is always a good idea for someone with less stamina, because we could get stamina potions back with this. So I would definitely recommend Empowering Talisman when you get it. And before you do have it though, the other thing that might make sense might be like the iron helmet, just to prevent criticals, or an amulet of life to give you that 1 health back. And then for body items, early on, if you don't have anything else unlocked really yet, you know, leather armor is okay for a little bit of defensiveness. However, when you do get it unlocked, I would recommend the robes of summoning, because this allows you to heal 2 on any of your allies, no matter where they are at any range. So this is really good for keeping them alive. And then for hand items, not a lot of hand items make sense here because we're not going to be attacking at melee, so none of these weapons make sense. We shouldn't really be taking that many hits, so shields don't make a whole lot of sense. You can take it if you want. However, I do like things like the mountain hammer that allows us to summon more things by using an item. That's not a bad idea, just to throw more stuff out there, since summoning kind of is our thing. But other than that, the best options really are just Staff of Elements maybe, because you could create elements, you could create the darkness you need, the wind you need, whatever, fire, whatever you need for powering up a specific ability that you want to use. So that would actually make a lot of sense. And then moving on to our feet, we definitely want to do Boots of Striding and their various upgrades. A burst of movement's probably going to be better than getting the little bump in movement from something like Comfortable Shoes, because we'll summon everything, we'll let them do all the fighting, and when the room's cleared, we'll use Boots of Striding, and we'll move up, get to the next room, and then resummon everything, essentially. And then for small items, again, anything that summons things, so the Falcon figurine here, it throws another summons out there. Since we use summons, we have ways we can use summons to do more damage or attack. It makes sense to throw more summons out there if you can. And the next thing is, since we're going to be getting rid of some of our heals, or all of our heals really by the end, I would go ahead and take up healing potions just in case you need them. And then definitely stamina potions for getting cards back, because 3 or 4 of our cards are going to be tied up as summons out there, which means we only have a hand of 4 or 5 cards left. So being able to use a stamina potion and a major stamina potion to refresh those cards and get those back and last a little bit longer before we have to take that first rest is really essential and critical to being able to last longer as the summoner. Okay, and with that said, let's go ahead and look at our perks real quick. So greater immunity is the first one, ignores negative scenario effects, and we get a couple +1s out of it. So I would take that one first, and then we're pretty straightforward on the rest of them, pretty much just down the list with removing your 2 -1s, and then we can replace our -2 with a 0, and then we can replace our 3 -1s here with +1s, and get ourselves to all positive modifiers besides our miss card. And then we can add a couple +2s, which we'll do that next. And at that point, we have all of our basic cards in, and you know, we're doing pretty decent. Our summons should be doing decent damage with +1s and +2s being pulled more often than not. And then we're going to get into our rollers, which again, we're going to pretty much go straightforward here. I think I would take the poisons first, and then the wounds, and then after that, the heal 1 cards, because I think, don't quote me on this, but I think these heal cards apply to anyone. They're not just heal self cards. I think you can use these when they pull up to heal an ally or heal a summons. So we're going to put those in, and then we'll put in the ones that add elements for us, and that would be all of our perks. The summoner is, again, it's a fun class. It's an interesting idea, but the way summons were done in Gloomhaven, it's not nearly as effective or useful as it could be. You know, in Frosthaven, they updated it and they made a lot of summons don't go to your lost pile when they get destroyed. They just go to your discard, which really helps with the stamina and makes you more willing to throw those summons out there. And I think that's what should have been done with the summoner. And in Gloomhaven 2.0, that very well may be the case. I haven't got to see it yet. My copy is on the way, hopefully by the end of this month. But in the digital, it's based off the original Gloomhaven version. So the summoner, I really wouldn't recommend you using the summoner unless you can figure out a good strategy for using her. Like I said, maybe sticking to only 1 summons and powering him up may actually be a better way to play her. But she is challenging. So if you're up for a challenge, give her a try. But otherwise, she is pretty difficult because of the way that summons work. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. Remember to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel out. You can watch this one here next if you want to see another guide for Gloomhaven. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and keep on gaming.